Hey everyone, this is Jeremy Schiefling, the founder and chief nerd of Break Into Tech. Super excited that you're taking time out of your Wednesday to come join us as we talk through this question of how do you break through any challenge in your job search? And I want to dive in and make this a really good use of your time, and I want to focus on two things. Number one, I want you guys to know that I have a lot of really good stuff coming up for you, but I have something very special at the end of this presentation. So even though I hate to do this, as a former teacher, I know the suspense is a powerful motivator. So I want to keep you guys waiting for that. But in the meantime, I also want to let you know that as a former kindergarten teacher who's had kids ask questions left and right throughout the course of his career, questions are always welcome. Feel free to chat those in at any point, and we'll take them throughout the course of this session today. As you can see here in this little vignette from my teaching experience, I loved questions about anything, including will it blend, which is my students' favorite. Okay, that being said, let's get down to the fun stuff here, which is how do you break through what's standing in your way in the job search? And to begin that, I want to start with this sort of teaching technique that I always had, which is the pop quiz. So let me ask you this question. What do you feel is the very worst part of the job search? Do you feel like it's the beginning of the search, where you just have no idea how to get started and you feel like you're stuck on the sidelines? Do you feel like it's that constant online application black hole that you pour yourself into month after month, week after week with no response? Or is it that final stage of, yes, you get interviews, but you're always the bridesmaid, never the bride, and you really want to break through to the promised land? So go ahead and vote right now. And I have about 100 folks on the line, so we'll see what the sort of sense of the room is here. And it looks like after a couple seconds that there's a clear sense that that middle part can be really daunting. And as you can see on your screens right now, a lot of people say, yeah, it's tough to get started, it's tough to close, but just building momentum is a really hard thing to do. And I totally empathize with that because I've seen that in my own career as a job seeker, and I've seen that in the frustrations of the folks that I've tried to hire as a hiring manager. And what I want you to know is that it's easy to fall into these traps of feeling like I don't belong in this space, I'm never getting any interest, I'm never getting the offer. But I also want you to know that there are relatively easy ways to hack through those challenges, to find the exact right role, to drastically increase your odds of getting an interview, and then to ultimately outperform an interview after interview, not by focusing on lots of random things, but the areas that are going to give you the biggest bang for your buck. So to help you with that, let's dive in with one more pop quiz. And again, we're going to come back to the poll section right here. And I'm going to ask you this, and this is sort of an open-ended question, which is, what do you believe is the most important step when you want to break into tech? So you're thinking about getting started. Is it about sort of picking the right tech companies? Is it reading a lot of tech blogs, checking out TechCrunch, VentureBeat, all these different things? Or is it figuring out your role fit? Go ahead and answer that poll now, and we'll get a sense of where everyone's heads are at. And thank you, by the way, for sharing your feedback here. This is super helpful. Okay, so I see the responses coming in, and it's very clear that you guys are very much aligned with me, which is that, yes, you can start out with this idea of trying to say, I want to go after Google or Facebook or Apple. Yes, you can spend endless hours reading all this information on the tech blogosphere, but if you don't know where you belong, if you don't know where you fit in and add value, you're going to have a hard time getting into the game. So to help you do that, I want to start with the first hack, which is finding the right role. And for those who did answer, I want to start by finding the right companies. The problem with that approach is that recruiters, the folks who hold your career destiny in their hands, literally, don't really care about your passion for their fancy company. You know, there's no recruiter at Google who's looking for more people who want to work at Google. There's no recruiter at Facebook who wants to find more people who are passionate about Facebook. Instead, if you look at the tool that they use every day, day in and day out, which is this LinkedIn premium recruiter tool, something that you never see as a job seeker, but that their companies spend $10,000 per year per seat on because it gives them access to all the professionals in the world, you can see at the heart of this tool, the very first thing they search for is, if I want to have someone in my company, I start with their job title. I start with what they can actually do for me, not how much they love my company. And that's why you should begin your search in the exact same place. Don't just say, hey, I'd love to work for X startup or Y big company. Say, I could be an amazing project manager or product manager. The problem is that if you're sitting on the outside of tech looking in, this is what can really feel like as far as this alphabet soup of all these random titles. You've probably heard about PM or maybe even PMM. How about biz dev versus corp dev versus biz ops? You know, this whole panoply of different acronyms that insiders know all about, but it's tough to grok if you're an outsider. And that gives you this really sort of depressing outsider feeling of always feeling like you're looking in, never feeling like you're part of this world. And so what I want to give to you today is a decoder ring, a way to break through that outsider feeling and actually get a sense of what these roles are all about and which ones are right for you. Because if you can do that, you can speak the language of tech, and most importantly, the language of the recruiters. So the first thing I want you not to do is to focus exclusively on titles and say, hey, I've never been a product manager or a project manager. Therefore, I can never be that in the future. As you can see here on the screen right now, all these titles that I had before I broke into tech basically had zero alignment on face with the ones that I wanted on the inside. But if you strip away the titles and focus on the roles underneath, the actual substance of what you did, you can start to realize pretty much whatever you've done before, there's some commonality with the role in the tech space. So for example, as a kindergarten teacher, I spent a huge amount of time trying to understand my students, where they came from, who their parents were, what they were up against in their lives. In the same way that a tech marketer has to understand their audience and their prospective clients. I was always figuring out ways to reach my students better, to be a more effective communicator. And in the same way, a tech marketer has to speak the language of their clientele and their user base. And then at the end of the day, I had to teach really well and evaluate the efficacy of that teaching. Just like a marketer has to bring their product to the marketplace and then measures the success of their campaigns. And then all of a sudden, even though the titles were misaligned, there was a lot of alignment between the roles. Okay, so that was my particular story. How do you figure out which role is right for you? Which one is going to be that nice fit where you can make a really strong case to the recruiter that you belong in that seat? And while it can seem overwhelming at the surface level, I want to dive deeper and give you a look inside 12 really great roles in the tech world that don't require any coding, but that may be a good fit for you. And to do that, I'm going to use a little bit of a story, which is the Apple car. Now, this is very much a modern day tech fable because there's constant debate in the tech press about, is Apple really working on a self-driving car? Is it coming out with an electric car? What's going on over there in Cupertino? Now, we don't know for sure what's exactly happening, but I can tell you, if there is a skunkworks project to build this car at Apple, it's going to be a huge team effort. And let me give you a sense of all the non-technical folks who are going to be involved in making it happen. So first of all, you've got the business operations team, often known as biz ops. And this is a team of mostly former consultants or bankers or strategists who are going to look at the market and try to figure out, is this a good place for Apple to play? For instance, what are the trends with electric cars? What are the market opportunities and downsides with self-driving cars? Can Apple apply its own strengths to really take advantage of these trends? And if they can make a compelling recommendation to Tim Cook, Apple CEO, he's going to give the green light to start staffing up and building out this team. So that's business operations. Now, once that light is lit, that's when the HR team takes over. And HR, as you may know, is all about talent acquisition and talent development. So even though Apple has lots of smart folks already, they don't have a lot of automotive engineers. They don't have a lot of folks with experience at the big automotive companies. So what the HR team does is it goes out there and recruits that talent in. It goes to Tesla, it goes to Ford, it goes to GM, and it brings that talent into Apple and gets them set up for success. But that's relatively slow, one engineer at a time. A faster way to go about the same process of staffing up quickly is corporate development. And this is often known as corp dev, and it's staffed with former bankers with a lot of M&A experience, folks who've gone out there and brought different companies together to basically leverage their respective strengths. And what Apple's corporate development team might do is they might say, hey, there's this really hot automotive startup in Croatia. If we can buy these guys, we're going to basically have a team, an army, if you will, of 100 awesome automotive engineers overnight versus hiring them one by one. And that's the power of acquisition in the tech world. And that's what corporate development does. Okay, so we have a little bit of a green light in place. The team is coming together. What are they going to work on? That's where the research function comes in. And there are typically two kinds of research projects going on in any tech company. First of all, you have relatively high market research. And that means looking at the overall sort of contours of this marketplace. Who's buying electric cars? How old are they? What are their demographics? What are they interested in? Trying to understand who this customer really is. And then you have lower level user experience or UX research, where folks are trying to figure out, of these prospective car buyers, what do they really care about? Maybe they do a test drive in a Tesla and figure out Tesla's great, but it doesn't have enough cup holders. Maybe that's an area where Apple can basically ply its strengths over the competition. And so between the market research and the UX research, an idea starts to form of what's possible. And to bring that idea to life, you've got the product management team, often known as PMs. Now, these product managers take all these great insights and they take all this great talent that's coming together and they put it together into a coherent vision. Here's what we're going to build. Here's what we're going to bring to the world. And then they break it down into little chunks that they can divvy up to different team members. But the problem is there's going to be so many moving parts in this giant project that the PMs can't do it by themselves. So they bring their counterparts, the project managers, in. These are folks who are super organized, the kind of folks where you walk into their kitchen and they have all of their cans alphabetized on the shelf because they want to take that chaos and turn it into order. And the way they do that is they have these master plans for the entire project. Who's doing what by when, holding them accountable in weekly stand-ups and making sure that this huge project actually comes to fruition. And in terms of actually getting this built out, that's where the operations and supply chain team comes in. Folks with knowledge of manufacturing on a massive scale who know how to get these things built either through their own factories or through partner factories around the world. So this Apple car is not just a cool idea on a whiteboard or a Gantt chart, but an actual physical product that's rolling off the assembly line. Now, you're going to have this product come out soon, but you got to make sure there's demand for it. You never want to get into a field of dream style thing where you build it and hope that they will come. So that's where marketing can help. So the product marketing role in tech is one where, working very closely with product managers, marketers try to figure out who's the audience, what can we tell them, how can we get them excited? And you know, if you're staring at an Apple MacBook right now, that Apple is absolutely masterful at this. They understand what drives us, what motivates us, and they put out these beautiful campaigns that get us super excited, so we can't wait to get behind the wheel of that car. So that's marketing. Now, there's just one little problem. If you've been following along with the story so far, you know that, yeah, marketing is great and a product is great, but you're not going to buy a new Apple car for $50,000 or $100,000 the same way you might buy a phone or a laptop, because you actually want to experience it. And better yet, you want to test drive it before you buy. So the way you're going to get to do that is you're going to have the business development team help you out. Even though Apple has no dealerships today, Apple does have the ability to forge partnerships with folks who do. So maybe similar to the way that Apple partnered with AT&T when it first launched the iPhone, Apple goes out to Hertz and says, you know what, Hertz, you're in a very commoditized market. Everyone's got the same exact stuff and there's no way to stand out. What if we gave you 2 years of exclusive access to the Apple car in exchange for the fact that at any one of your 5,000 locations around the world, someone could come in and test drive an Apple car whenever they want? And now you're leveraging the strengths of both sides. Apple's amazing innovation and Hertz's expanded distribution. And now you solve that test drive problem through business development or biz dev, which is all about forging partnerships. Now that's the partnership on the consumer side. What about partnerships on the enterprise side, the big business customer? Let's say, Uber and Lyft are about to IPO in a couple months. They want to buy not one Apple car for their fleets, but 1 million or 100,000. They're not going to go to apple.com and just plunk down their credit card. They want to be wined and dined. And that's the sales function. Going out there, building a real human relationship with someone on the other side, earning their trust and closing the deal. It's such a critical role that at most companies, including LinkedIn, including Google, there are more salespeople than there are engineers. So a great role to check out. Now, the car is selling like hotcakes and everything's looking great. But Apple is not focused only on one sale. They're focused on the next sale and the sale after that. And the way that you have repeat customers and word of mouth driven customers is by having a great customer experience. So Apple puts together a customer success team, maybe who brings Apple car right to your driveway with a white glove valet, or who answers a question at every point that you have it so you don't ever feel left out in the cold. And now you feel like Apple's rolled out this red carpet experience for you, so much so that every single new car you buy is going to be an Apple car, and you're going to tell your friends too. That's customer success, and that's critically important in today's sort of SaaS subscription-driven world. And then finally, just like this whole project started on a spreadsheet with the business operations team, it's going to end on a spreadsheet because the finance and accounting teams are going to take the quarterly reports from the first quarter of sales, share them with the CEO, who's then going to report them out to Wall Street. And so as you can see, this is a massive team effort to bring this car to the marketplace. But even though there were lots of coders and designers and all those folks on board, there were a lot of business folks as well, non-technical folks. And if you're sitting there thinking, do I belong in this world? The answer is absolutely yes. It's just figuring out which of these roles is right for you. Now to get there, I want to give you a little bit of a cheat sheet. And this is exactly how I made my own decision-making as a would-be techie. First of all, I thought about the fact that all of the world's roles basically are on the spectrum. Super analytical roles, things where you're working by yourself to crunch data, to analyze problems. Things like looking at patterns in a giant database or researching lots of articles, trying to understand what's happening. All the way down to interpersonal roles, where you're spending lots of time with teammates and customers, things like sales and HR that are very much driven by building relationships with others. And so what I want you to do right now is to check this out and find your own sweet spot on the spectrum. What have you done before? Have you been managing budgets? Maybe finance is a good place for you. Have you been a great team leader, a great general manager? Maybe product or project management is the right place. Are you that person who always convinces your friends that this is the right restaurant to try? If so, maybe sales, maybe business development gives you a chance to build those relationships. So try to find yourself on that spectrum. And to give you an example of how that works, we actually have a very brave volunteer on the line who's very kind to join us and share her story. And to give you a little taste of Neha's experience, I'm going to invite Neha to turn on her microphone. So Neha, if you are out there, go ahead and turn on your microphone. Are you there, Neha?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Absolutely. And thank you so much for joining.
Oh, no problem at all. It's my pleasure.
Cool. So I'm super excited to have you on board here. And just to get started, do you mind sort of giving a little bit of background about your story to everyone listening?
Sure. So to start off, I am a mechanical engineer by degree. So I have an undergrad and a master's in mechanical engineering. And I started so I've been in healthcare for the past 9 years almost. So I started my career as a design engineer. And it was a good role, but I kind of figured it was very siloed. And so I transitioned to a manufacturing, so operations role for a large med tech company in Minneapolis. So, when I look at your circle, I think I was a person running process development on the manufacturing floor, sort of working with a large team to kind of like push products out the door. Kind of figured Minneapolis was a little too cold for me. So I decided to move to Dallas, again, working for a big med tech giant, but this was more a systems engineering role. So I took in like a cross-functional role between hardware and software, was doing a lot of data analytics work, and just being an engineer really helped sort of narrow down problems and kind of figure out how do I translate these issues into sort of next generation product developments. So I worked very closely as an engineering partner with marketing and sales to kind of figure out what is it that customers want, how can we build it into a current product, and how do we explain this unique value prop to our customers. Did that for a little bit, and then, I guess my experience till now had been in very big companies. The startup itch was trying, getting to me. So I transitioned initially as a systems engineer, but then this role, because it was a startup, it turned into a product manager role. Yeah. So I was looking very closely at how customers use our products, and how can we sort of build next level functionality. But here I was not doing the building. I was leading teams that essentially were doing this. And just to give a background, this was a medical device that had both hardware and software components to it. So I'm definitely not a coder, but understand it just enough to be dangerous, I think. So that being said, I did that for a little while. I am currently getting my MBA at Kellogg School of Management at Northwestern University. And this quarter, I'm actually working as a product manager for a company called ClearCare, which is an enterprise SaaS company. And they make software for home care agencies. So again, in the healthcare realm, and just sort of like knowing regulation has been really helpful. But again, like doing product management in a completely software role has been a very interesting process, I would say. And yeah, I mean, like I think my background is like a mishmash of just a bunch of things, and I'm here to kind of try and see how I can narrow it down to maybe try and figure out like what I want to be when I grow up.
Right. That's the quintessential questions everyone is asking, even at age 70, right?
Right.
And so when you think about sort of this experience that you've had, starting out as a mechanical engineer, working on systems, working with marketing and sales, where did you find yourself naturally gravitating and doing your best work? Was it more on that analytical side or more on that interpersonal?
So I think it's a combination of both. And the reason I say that is sometimes so when it was mostly analytical, it was mostly like, like a one-man show. So I love that sometimes where I'm like not talking as much to people and like doing my own thing, because that way I'm able to like get to deliverables really fast. But then I kind of like figured it gets like tiring after some time. And that's when I love working with people too. So I think for me, it's a combination of both. And I don't know if that's a good answer, but I kind of like enjoy both of them, and sometimes like to distance myself from both, if it makes any sense.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think if you think about the sort of distribution of the human population, it's probably like a bell curve where a lot of folks are somewhere in that middle. And there are some folks who are extremely introverted or extremely extroverted, extremely analytical or extremely interpersonal.
Right.
And so when you've done this product management internship, and obviously, as you can see on this chart, very much in the middle of the spectrum, did you feel like it sort of drew on both sides of your brain in a very pleasing way?
I think so. I mean, I guess there is this aspect to product management where you're managing the vision, and you also get to build. So I think or essentially kind of decide how it is built. The engineers do the building, of course, but so I really enjoyed that part of it. But sometimes what really frustrates me too about PM is it's a lot of sort of you have to like get work done through influence. Rather than, I've had teams earlier who reported to me and I had more control over that. Whereas as a PM, I need to speak like finance language, which is where the MBA has been very helpful. But I also need to like sort of understand code and kind of like have to talk to engineers. So I think that's one thing that's been slightly frustrating. But again, I think it comes with practice, maybe. I'm not sure.
Yeah, no, I think you put your finger on the most important thing to know about product management. A lot of folks, especially MBAs, say, oh, I want to be the PM. It's kind of like the quarterback of the team, the general manager.
Right.
But unlike a quarterback or a coach, you don't necessarily have control over everyone because they don't report to you. Yeah. The engineers report to the engineering manager. The designers report to the designing manager. And so it can be a place where you've got to do a lot of sort of soft power using influence, not just command.
Right.
That being said, I have found that a lot of folks who thought they wanted to do product management have been a little happier with the roles sort of on the right side here, which are project management and operations. And here's why. With project management, it's very clear who's the captain of the ship.
Right.
You're leading the stand-ups. You're working directly with the engineers. Everyone knows that they are accountable to you on a day-to-day basis for making progress. So that can be more satisfying versus soft power. In addition, with operations, instead of overseeing the entire process, you often carved out a piece where you're the specialist, you're the master of that domain. And that can be more satisfying than trying to run a three-ring circus without even a whip to command everyone.
Right.
Cool. Have you had the ability perhaps to like talk to folks maybe in the internship on the project management side or on the operations side?
So because it's a startup, we don't, from what I've seen, I've spent the past like 3 years in startups, and we've never had project managers. I don't know if that's the norm. The product manager is the project manager. And so I am a trained like a project manager from just working at bigger companies. So, I'm definitely sort of like aware of that. One thing I've never had the opportunity to do is like to talk to somebody on the ops or the biz ops sides, because I really have no idea what that means.
Absolutely.
And I have a feeling that it probably differs by industry.
Yeah. And let me actually just show how you might do that.
Okay.
You probably know this already as a very savvy sort of Kellogg student. But for those who are watching online thinking, how would I even figure out if this role is a good fit for me? What you can do is say, hey, show me someone who works at, say, Google in an operations role. And if you want to make it even more interesting, you can then say, go ahead. Oops, got to type company, right? I have to tell you, typing in public is always my biggest nightmare, but I will get through it. So you got all these people who work in operations at Google. And then could you even say, show me of these people, the people who have gone to Northwestern. So I have that in common with them. Voila, here are 38 people you could reach out to and say, Tarif, Julie, could you talk to me a little bit about what it means to do operations or business operations in a very big tech context?
This makes sense. I mean, and I guess when I have done a little bit of outreach through school, but this I think is a very cool trick to do it.
Cool. Well, we'll spend more time on that in a second when we start talking about networking. In the meantime, any last questions, Neha, just about sort of how to find that right role fit as you make the next leap in your career?
I think more than I know, and part of the role fit was also, and you said maybe not a good way of doing it was like, finding companies. One thing I struggle with a little bit is, tech is a very generalized term. It could be health tech or fintech or automotive tech, and I feel when you start going into roles for these, they have very specific requirements. Do you have any pointers on how to sort of narrow it down to, because I feel like if you go talk to somebody at fintech, for example, you have to understand, large part of like the payments landscape, and that may not naturally come to people. How do you sort of deal with that?
Absolutely. Great question. And I do think that like the sweet spot for a recruiter is not just I'm looking for a general project manager, but I'm looking for a consumer-focused project manager or an enterprise-focused product manager. Right. And so having that clarity of sort of the niche that you want to be in can help as well. Again, I would recommend sort of saying, hey, can I find some folks who work in operations, let's say in ed tech, if maybe that's an area that you want to explore, and then use that as a jumping off point. Again, the very best thing you can do with your time as someone who's starting out your search is to learn from the mistakes of others.
Right.
As opposed to me, who sort of blindly wandered into mistake after mistake. Find out what people have learned in the course of their career, understand what that feels like, and then use that to inform your own search.
Got it. Thank you.
Oh, great question. Yeah. So please stay on the line because I would love to sort of bring you in a little bit later if you have any additional questions. But for now, in the interest of time, let me sort of move on to this next step, which is trying to figure out, okay, once you have that focus that Neha is about to build, how do you actually turn that into an interview and stop getting all these rejection letters? So I'm going to basically switch over to another poll here. So hold on one second. And a big thank you again to Neha for being so brave and volunteering here. And so when you think about sort of what determines whether you get an interview or not, go ahead and vote on this poll. Is it that classic question of like, do I have the right keywords on my resume? Have I matched the job description? Is it about getting referrals from folks on the inside? Or is it reaching that mythical all-star status on your LinkedIn profile where you finally reached the promised land? So go ahead and vote right now. See what folks say. And it looks like there's a real strong consensus here that it's all about referrals, which is awesome because it shows that you guys are very much on the money when it comes to what makes a difference. So check this out. JobVite, one of the large applicant tracking systems that looks at how people get into jobs and how people get interviews in the first place, has found that there's a very easy way to 10x your odds of getting an interview for any job. Because when you look at where applications are coming from, you find that the usual suspects are all over the place. Career sites, so going right to the company site. Going to job boards like Monster or Indeed or other places, definitely prevalent. But when you look at where offers actually come from, not applications, but offers, sure enough, the number one source comes from a very small set of applicants, the folks who get referrals. Now you might say, having someone on the inside refer me seems like a kind of cool thing, but why is it so powerful? Why is there a 10x difference between applying online and getting a referral in terms of my outcome? Well, the reason is that referrals help every single party in the entire process. Unlike online applications, which can be a little bit adversarial, you're jamming thousands of applications down the recruiter's throat and they're totally freaking out. Referrals help everyone. So first of all, they help you get offers, just like we saw with that data. Someone vouching for you being a good candidate makes people want to hire you. That's pretty simple. But they also help other folks. They help the recruiters. If you've got 1,000 applications in your system and you're dreading reading all those resumes, guess what? Just read the ones that got a referral. Now you easily have a much more curated list. If you are a referrer, a person who works at the company, you might say, oh, referring is so hard, I don't know. Except that using a tool like Lever or Greenhouse or JobVite, the applicant tracking system that your company uses, you're usually filling out two forms. You're putting someone's resume in and you're putting their name and their job title in. And based on that, you now are not only doing a good deed for this person, you have a chance to earn a referral bonus of up to $5,000 depending on what the company is offering. So a huge win for the referrer as well. For the team that's hiring, so not just the recruiter, but the hiring manager themselves, referrals come in faster. If you have someone who's referred and chomping at the bit, chances are they move through the application process faster and they start working faster. And that's beautiful if your team is underwater, struggling with resources. And then finally, for the company itself, which is concerned about the macro talent environment, are we bringing in the right talent? Are we keeping them happy? Referrals stay longer than anyone else. So it's incredible but true. If you're coming through a career site or a job board, you are more likely to leave the company fast than if you came through a referral. And that's music to any CHRO's ears. Anyone who leads HR wants to have a loyal, dedicated workforce. So everyone from the job seeker to the referrer, to the recruiter, to the hiring manager, to the company are happy to have referrals. So how do referrals actually work? So if you're like me and you've wanted to work at Google, you've probably gotten a message like this. This is what I call the online application black hole, because you know that your resume was received, but you never hear about it again. And so what I did after getting a lot of those is I found someone who went to my alma mater, which is a tiny school, by the way, like 400 students in every class. So not even like tons and tons of connectivity to the tech world. But I found this one guy who worked at Google. I sent him this message. And then voila, within a week, I had my first interview at Google. And so the proof is really in the pudding. And what I want to do today is I want to show you exactly how to get these referrals. Because even though I think based on that survey response, you all intellectually know that these referrals are critical, no one has ever sat down and said, here's how you get one. Here are the steps you go through. So I want to do that with Simone today. Simone, are you on the line? Let me just make sure that Simone has access here. And then Simone, if you're on the line, please let me know. Okay, so we'll give Simone a couple seconds to get started. And then let's go do a little bit of a demonstration about how this works. So in the case of Simone, let's say that you were looking for a job at, I don't know, Apple. You want to work at Apple because you've always dreamed of working there. So what I would recommend doing is doing the following. I would come over here and say, okay, I want to find folks on the inside who can help me out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, show me everyone who works over at Apple. I'm going to turn off this Northwestern filter so we're looking completely unencumbered. Okay, so lots of people work at Apple, clearly. That's awesome. But you might say, I don't know anyone directly. I don't have any first degree connections. What do I do in that case? Well, let me give you 3 steps to go through that can help you find someone on the inside and then how you're going to connect with them. So the first thing you might say is, show me someone who works at Apple and then who's a second-degree connection, a friend of a friend. And voila, even if I don't have a ton of first-degree connection, I have thousands of second-degree connections, which means I can get in touch with this recruiter, the supply manager, or almost anyone else. So let's say that I want to talk to Ruben. The way that I'm going to do this, and Simone, are you on the line by any chance?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay,
Do you
wonderful.
hear me?
I can hear you great. Thank you so much for joining.
Great.
Simone, if you wouldn't mind just sort of setting the stage for everyone, tell us a little bit about where you are in your career and what you're looking for.
Yes, I'm an experienced sales manager for the food industry with an emphasis on the retail, but also the food service channel. That means also hotels and restaurants. So I've worked for a lot of manufacturers, importers, and I've basically built business ranging from distribution to retail partners. And, it ranges from everything from generating leads, cold calling, to making corporate presentation, and managing brokers, demo teams, sales staff. And I've always specialized in high quality products versus, mass market. And I've dealt with the range of business I've dealt with is between about 500,000 to about 10 million.
Wow. Cool. And I think you mentioned to me that you're sort of thinking about moving into the tech world, but you're wondering, can you get your foot in the door? Is that right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Because I think when people look at my LinkedIn profile or my resume, they look at me as a food sales manager.
Right.
And so it's very hard to make that connection. And I think I've set myself up on AngelList. I've applied to Indeed. I've even reached out to some people because I'm interested in very specific roles and types of tech, meaning retail tech, food tech, IoT, SAS. And I know I fit into a sales and business development role, potentially me customer success, but I've had only a few nibbles over the last 6 weeks, a few phone interviews, and then it really doesn't go anywhere. And I'm also reaching out to tech recruiting firms. Mm-hmm. And I have a call set up with somebody, rather junior person, after I sent her my LinkedIn profile and my resume, because this recruiting company is looking for a lot of sales talent. But again, how do I translate this? Number one. And number two, I have a lot of experience. I'm not a college grad, and I do not want an SDR job where I make 100 phone calls a day. I want something that is building relationships.
Totally. And I think the good news is that all that expertise is exactly what recruiters are looking for based on my very first point. If I want to hire a sales executive, I'm going to look for an account executive, not for someone who has SDR on their profile or something random. So I think you've got the right background. The trick is, like you said, there's going to be a lot of competition for these jobs. How do you stand out? How do you get your foot in the door? So just to do a little bit of a demonstration, Simone, what would be one of your dream companies, a company you would love to work for?
Well, I'm not looking at the really large players because I've been in a lot of startup environments, and I really enjoy that sort of smaller to mid-size staff size. And I don't think I would stand a chance at Google or Apple. And so for me, would be companies like Grubhub, potentially also Bamboo Rose, which does supply chain management for retail. Also a company like Knotel, Knotel, they design office space for companies, and they do everything from the lease to furnishing that space and configuring it to the specific company needs.
Cool, cool. I think those are awesome companies. Just to do a little bit of a demo for everyone, let's focus on Grubhub, because the food delivery space is just flat out exploding right now. Between Grubhub, DoorDash, Uber Eats, there's a lot of venture capital pouring into the space with the expectation that's going to be the way that everyone gets food, 5 or 10 years from now. So if you want to get in at the relative ground floor at Grubhub, do you know anyone at Grubhub, Simone?
No, I don't.
Okay, so this is the perfect situation, because I think for a lot of folks listening, they're going to say, yeah, referrals sound great, but I don't know anyone in my companies. Otherwise, I would have gotten a referral already. So if you want to find someone who works at Grubhub, you're going to go ahead and use this sort of Boolean search here. You're going to say, company is Grubhub, and let's make it specifically focused on sales, right? Someone on the sales side who can help introduce you maybe to the VP of sales. How does that sound?
Great.
Okay, so we'll do company : Grubhub and then title : sales. Sure enough, about 300 folks on the Grubhub sales team. So no small endeavor. How do we get in touch with these folks? So like I was doing with that previous example, I think the smartest place to start if you don't have first degree connections is second degree. Any ideas why that might be the case, Simone?
I'm sorry, I missed that.
Oh, my apologies. I think what I'm trying to get at here is that the second degree connection, which again just means like a friend of a friend on LinkedIn, is a very powerful tool because it leverages social connections, right?
Yes.
That social proof of having a friend in common. And so if you reach out cold to anyone on this list, they might not give you the time of day, but if someone can vouch for you, now you've got that bond going to work for you. Okay. So again, for those who are following along at home, you go to connections, you make second degree the focus here, and then what you're going to look for is someone who has a little bit of clout, so maybe a sales executive or something like that, and someone who knows someone that we know and it can really vouch for us. So in this case, Daniel Carver, corporate sales executive at Grubhub, sounds like it could be a good fit. Let me check those shared connections. And sure enough, I worked with Tiffany when I worked at Udacity. We worked side by side really closely, so she can speak for my expertise. I can send her a message and ask for an introduction. And here's a little pro tip. Simone, any idea how we can almost guarantee that Tiffany will go to bat for us?
Well, I mean, in this particular case, obviously this person is somehow linked to the Grubhub executive. And if they ask him to give me at least an informational interview opportunity, that might work.
Right. So we can definitely, just flat out ask for it. I agree. But let me be honest, Tiffany is very much busy because she's running this huge acquisition machine for Udacity. The way that I can get Tiffany to go to bat for me is to make it easy for her. There's this big idea in Silicon Valley of frictionless experiences. It's got to be easy to go through the funnel. To make it easy for Tiffany, I'm going to actually write up a little bit of an intro straight to Daniel that she can forward and CC me on. And that way she doesn't have to spend half an hour drafting a full introduction. Instead, she can just press forward and then add me, and she's off to the races. How does that sound, Simone?
Perfect. Cool.
Okay. For now, let's fast forward a little bit. Let's say that Daniel gets this request and says, okay, I don't know Simone, but I know Tiffany, and Tiffany's great. So if she's recommending Simone, Simone's got to be good. So he's going to take your call. On that call, what do you talk about, Simone?
I would say that I should talk about my general experience in sales. Yeah. And, my passion for food and how I would like to apply that maybe in more technology related environment.
Yeah, that's great. So for those who are sort of following along with their own scorecard at home, if you're bold like Simone is, feel free to make your pitch. Explain what you can do for him. If you're a little more introverted like I am, you can even just ask him questions. Say like, how does the sales team work there? What are your biggest priorities? What are your biggest challenges? Just try to understand what he's up against. And then what are you going to ask at the very end of that conversation, Simone, that will lead to a referral?
I would say number one, whether he could see that I could be maybe a fit for him, whether I could contribute. And if not, if he has some other recommendations whom I should reach out to if I'm interested in this space.
Absolutely, yeah. So you could definitely say, hey, are you interested in me? Is there someone else who might be interested? And again, I think that it never hurts to be bold. It never hurts to ask for what you want. But I will also say that for a lot of folks, that can feel really scary, especially in their first foray into the tech world. So again, a slightly easier way to make that ask is to say, hey, everything you've told me just sounds awesome. Great team, great company, great future. I'd love to be a part of that. I'm not sure the best way to break in. If you were in my shoes, what would you do to get the best shot at an interview? And the power of that phrasing, if you were in my shoes, is that it changes it from a transactional relationship to a mentor-mentee one, where he's kind of coaching you about his own company. And now that he's thinking empathetically about where you are, probably was there himself several years down the road, he's more likely to say, you know what? Referrals are everything here. Half of our employees are hired by referrals. Let me put in a good word for you. So again, just different opportunities to make that pitch, whether you're going to be direct and explicit or give them the chance to make that pitch on their own. How does that sound, Simone?
Yeah, it's probably a more sophisticated approach.
Yeah, maybe a little sophisticated, but I think if you've got the guts to put yourself out there, that's really powerful as well. So do what's sort of a right fit for your personality and your character, and don't look back. Okay, so that's the first step. What I would recommend is, if you can't find any second degree connections, please, please, please do not give up. So Simone, where did you go to university?
UC Berkeley.
Beautiful. Okay, so we're going to go back a couple of searches here. And we're going to say, okay, let's find some people who work at sales who maybe also went to Berkeley. So again, all filters, just like we were doing with Neha's example previously, come down to the school section and say, show us people on the sales team who went to UC Berkeley. And LinkedIn sometimes makes it spell it's all the way out, but sure enough, there it is. We're going to apply that. And voila, even by focusing on just one school out of the 20,000 in the world, sure enough, we found someone who shares that connection. And so if we were going to send George a message, what message would we send, Simone?
Well, if I sent him a message, I could say that I'm a fellow alumni and I no longer live in Berkeley, but I always carried a torch for the old hometown and the university, and that I would love to connect and chat and get his feedback.
Absolutely. So I'm getting a little bit poetic here. You don't have to do this. But I think your instinct is right. You always play the strongest card you have, especially if you only have one deal of the cards, so to speak. So start with that connectivity, the fact that you have this thing in common. Now, as you can see, I'm taking sort of the path of least resistance of reaching out straight through LinkedIn with a customized invitation. If you don't hear back, because honestly, not everyone remembers their LinkedIn password or has it set to go to their right account, another great way to get in touch with George is to go to hunter.io and say, hey, show me what the Grubhub company email address format is like. Sure enough, it's first initial, last name at grubhub.com. So in this particular case, we go over to G Avramov at grubhub.com. And even if George isn't checking his actual LinkedIn account, you can be certain as a sales executive that he's checking his email account day in and day out. So just one other way to get in touch with George. Does all that feel doable, Simone?
Yeah, I think this was really a great point, because I actually didn't even know how to research such a work email. I use other more web-based search engines for that, and sometimes they don't come out with the right combination.
Absolutely, right. And so you're definitely going to want to make sure that you use something like hunter.io to figure that out. And then the last thing I'll say is, even if you don't have secondary connections, even if you don't have school connections, even if it's a tiny startup, I never want you to give up. There's always some way in. So maybe you say, hey, I used to volunteer for Habitat for Humanity. Sure enough, there's someone who volunteered at Habitat who works in sales at Grubhub. Maybe that's the way in. And the bottom line is, never feel locked out, because there's always a key out there. You just got to find it. Sounds doable, Simone?
Yes, great.
Okay, so I'm going to come back to you in one moment. Let me take some questions here, and then we'll pick up right where we left off. Okay, so Simone was an awesome volunteer. I want to see what questions folks have. So Bhushan asks, which site did you mention to get the email format for the employee? That's hunter.io. It's all free, hunter.io, great place to go. Skylar says, does this hold true to entry-level employees that have little experience? Absolutely. In fact, this is the easiest thing in this entire process to do, even if you've never had a full-time job before, because you're not focusing on what you can actually do for them necessarily, so much as you're focusing on what you have in common. The fact that you went to the same school, were part of the same club, volunteered for the same organization, know the same people. You're using innately human connectivity, not occupational connectivity. So great for everyone. Great question, Skylar. Cadden asked for that phrase again. Again, that power phrase that pays is, if you put yourself in my shoes, what would you do to get the best shot at an interview? And again, the critical part is the first part, because it frames it around empathy and experiencing what you're going through versus do something for me. And that's always more well received. Okay, and then one last question from Christina. I agree referrals come in handy, but I've also found that I got more interest in my resume without a referral than with a referral I barely knew. So if I get a referral from a LinkedIn connection, I've been avoiding it because it doesn't seem to be helping me. And you're right. If you have a totally random person in the company go to bat for you, that may not help. A, because they may not know you very well, but more importantly, they may not know the recruiter or the hiring manager very well. And that's why in this example that we just did with Simone, we specifically focus on folks on this team. Because imagine you're the hiring manager on the sales team, and one of your peers comes to you and says, hey, Simone is amazing. If you know that person well, if you work side by side with them, if you even hang out with them together on the weekends, you're not going to say no to that person. So definitely get referrals from folks who have that influence. And then if you're still not getting results, ask your referrer to do one extra step. Don't just refer me in that applicant tracking system where I'm one additional signal. Actually send an email straight to the hiring manager or straight to the recruiter, so that way it really stands out in an otherwise cluttered field. That's the most powerful way to put referrals to work for you. Great question. I love that, Christina. Okay, so now let's go to our final section here. And to get there, I have a question about the most important thing that you're going to face in a job interview. Okay, so you're in the job interview and you're getting ready for all these things that are going to get thrown at you. Which of these questions are you going to focus on? So go ahead and check this out. The poll's on your side right now. And think about, what is the most important question that you're going to be facing? Is it about telling people about yourself? Is it about a time that you did something, a case question? What do you think is critical? Okay, so let me go ahead and end that poll. We'll see what everyone said. Very interesting. And so here's the truth now. So check this out. The number one thing that you can do in any interview in the world is to win the first 5 minutes. And here's why. So Laszlo Bock, who was the head of HR and head of recruiting for Google until recently, wrote this book that was a bestseller called Work Rules. And in it, he bemoans the fact that every academic study of interviews has shown that even though people always swear, I'm going to be objective, I'm going to listen to everything the interviewee says, I'm going to take that all into a holistic consideration, 50% plus of hiring managers make up their minds in the first 5 minutes. So this is not a well-considered decision, a drawn-out decision, an objective decision. This is a gut instinct decision. And the trick is, if they're going to make up their minds in the first 5 minutes and then spend the rest of the interview trying to figure out How can I gather evidence to support my already made decision? Why are you as an interviewee spending all this time focusing on answering those last 25 minutes of questions when you should have been focused on nailing the first 5? And so all this time that you think about for your weaknesses and your behavioral questions and how many golf balls could fit in the Empire State Building and making sure that your thank you letter is on point, all of that is beside the point if the decision was made at minute 1 or minute 5. And so what I want to focus on today is how do you win the interview when they ask that old chestnut, tell me about yourself. Now, the first thing you have to understand is how humans make decisions when they evaluate each other. And while we can all say that there are all these things going through our minds, academic research shows that it really boils down to 2 axes. How competent are you and how warm are you? And you can see in this kind of fanciful Simpsons example, competence is all about, are you good at your job? Could you do this job? Could I trust you to do it? Whereas warmth is more of that personality assessment. Do I want to do that job with you? Would I like working next to you? And really, as with every good 2x2 matrix you've ever seen, you want to be in that upper right-hand quadrant. You want to be the Lisa Simpson who can not only do the job, but you're going to be the great colleague that everyone wants as well. And so you got to focus on how do you answer that first question in a way that Lisa Simpson would, with high warmth and high confidence. Now to start, let me focus on the way not to answer this question, because this is how I did it when I first got to grad school and was bombing my interviews left and right. So people would say, Jeremy, tell me about yourself. And I would say, here's where I went to college. Here's what I studied. So then I started doing this thing for a couple of years. I was teaching, and then I went to a nonprofit sector, and then I decided to go to grad school, and then I chose this school. It's kind of this like long odyssey that goes on for pages and pages and just never really has a clear point so much as wasting time. And you can imagine that if you've got that scorecard in your mind for warmth and competence, here are your ratings. First of all, can I trust this guy to be a great techie, a marketer, or a product manager when he has no structure to his answers? He just seems incompetent, totally disorganized. And also, am I going to be motivated by this guy? Am I going to want to work with this guy if he's just going through the motions? There's no passion to any choices ever made. So that's what you don't want to do. When I started turning around and getting offers, I flipped the script. Instead of just having this long laundry list of everything I had done in my career, I had a clear theme. Here's this passion that's motivated me in every job I've had. Here's why it's brought me to this room today. And then I really doubled down on that sense of I've got this burning drive to help people, to serve others, to be a great colleague. And that's the exact person you want sitting next to you when the money's down and you've got to deliver. That's a great colleague. So what I want you guys to really focus on when you prepare for this, and you don't have to script it out to this exact level, but I want you to at least have a good outline in your mind. And I want you to focus on 3 bullet points. This is the PET model, P-E-T. First of all, number 1, what's your passion? What's driving you into this role? What's brought you here today and that has motivated you throughout the course of your career? Maybe it's about helping others like me. Maybe it's about solving problems. Maybe it's about being creative. Maybe it's about bringing more things to more people. Whatever it is, start with a clear thesis. That's your passion. But don't just talk the talk, actually walk it. And that's where the next step, evidence, comes in. You don't have to tell me everything you did, but give me some real evidence that that passion is true and genuine for you. And if you can give a really great little story here about how you taught students or served clients or helped your teammates be better, that's great evidence. And then always put yourself finally back into the shoes of the hiring manager and tie it back to this role and this team. Great, you've got this passion. Great, you have these examples. What does that mean for me? And if you can demonstrate how that passion, that evidence makes you perfect for this job, you've already started to win the interview, and it's only a few minutes old. That's the warmth and competence way of answering this message. Okay, so Simone, are you still there?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for hanging with us. Are you still game for doing a little bit of a practice session here?
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. And again, this is a no judgment zone. This is purely about, getting that muscle memory building so that when you walk into that interview at Grubhub or anywhere, you feel ready to sort of crush this answer, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so again, take a couple of seconds. Think about, the passion that's driven you in your sales career, some of the examples of that, and then how that might be a good fit for the Grubhub sales team, okay?
Yes.
Okay. So Simone, great to have you in today. So excited to meet you in person. I love to sort of dive into a lot of nitty gritty questions, but before we get there, why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Well, I've been in sales for the food industry for quite some time. And I really specialize in launching emerging brands or revitalizing older existing product lines. And I've done this by working for a number of manufacturers and importers of high-end specialty products. And I've been able to really create brands from scratch and make them successful in a tight marketplace. I mean, an example would be that I launched an artisanal salumi line, was named Vincenza for Whole Foods. And I was able to do that through actually a couple of places of my employment. The first company was just not large enough to help this project off the ground. So me and the production manager, who is somebody who actually learned how to do the charcuterie business due to his grandfather, who came originally from Italy. And the family was involved in a lot of pork stores. So he was really doing the creative product end, and I was really doing the business development and sales end to the whole foods team. So we designed product labels and packaging. We really refined the whole process with them, testing recipes. And finally, we launched the product line in the Northeast, the Northeastern region of Whole Foods. And we're able to generate $600,000 in sales.
Wow.
So that's one example of where I launched a line versus another product line right now that I'm importing from Germany, and it's frozen pasta and dumpling products. And it's manufactured by a very well-known company, but they only deal with the European market. So we import the product line, and I had to find distribution regionally, nationally, to help this product become known to the consumer and place it in appropriate retail chains, mostly single operator or regional chains like Cinderella or Fairway. So this, over a course of 3 years, has gone from $0 to now $500,000 in sales. However, it's a very competitive marketplace that requires a lot of investment. And for smaller brands, there's a big struggle now finding that financing. So I'd like to move into the technology space where I would have a broader audience, perhaps, and where I could use all that, entrepreneurial drive and passion for food that I have and the knowledge of the market.
Absolutely. Cool. So first of all, I give you big props, Simone. It's incredibly brave to share your story in front of one interviewer, let alone 100 audience members. So that's amazing. Number two, I love the fact that you curated your experience to focus on 2 examples versus 20 examples or every job you've had. So that was a nice job of sort of editing it down. That said, when I evaluate you on those 2 criteria of warmth and competence, the competence one still comes into question because it felt a little bit long. And I was sort of waiting for okay, is she done or is she still going? So I would sort of continue to edit a little bit more. And I'll tell you how to do in a second. And then the warmth is, I think, actually coming through really nicely, especially when you talk about helping others. When you talk about working with, the small salumi maker or the small independent grocer like Citarella, I can tell there's a lot of pride in what you do. So here's the way that I would repackage that for Grubhub, focus on warmth and competence with an eye towards relevance to their business. I would say, all throughout my career, I've been motivated by the idea of helping others have their best businesses, do their best work. So for example, when I was launching new products, I worked with a really small mom and pop salumi maker that basically went from $0 in revenue to $500,000 a year in just a couple of months' time. And to see sort of the satisfaction in that artisanal vendor's face as they saw that business come in, that was really rewarding. I've done the same thing with Citarella, where I helped launch a new product line that grows $600,000. And so when I think about what I could bring to Grubhub and why I'm so excited to be here today, I think about the fact that you guys work with small businesses, pizzerias, sushi shops, Chinese restaurants that are trying to grow their business, to achieve their own dreams. I want to be the salesperson who goes out and builds those partnerships and helps them achieve what they set out to do. And I feel like Grubhub would give me the best shot to do that. And now you've got those same stories, but you're tying them right back to what Grubhub needs and how you can do this job so well. Does that make sense?
Yes, I think that is very helpful. Thank you.
Cool. Well, I think the big credit goes to you for just having such a great body of work. Any questions, Simone, as far as just sort of how you would sort of tie that up even further for a tech company?
Yes, I think one thing I'm struggling with is that also if you go beyond, say, a food tech company, how do I convince them that they would want me as an account manager, business development manager, if they're looking for, say, several years of enterprise sales within a similar setting?
Yeah.
And so, I can give them all my, successes and what I've achieved, but they're saying, well, but that was in a food setting.
Right.
How does this make her valuable to me selling my software?
Yeah. So here's what I would do. Instead of focusing on working with small vendors, I would change the frame of your opening to focusing on navigating complex organizations. So you say, all my career as a salesperson, I've loved the thrill of working with big organizations to figure out how can I help them be more successful. For instance, Whole Foods is a massive 20,000 person company, but I was able to work with the right leaders inside the company to get this deal done. And so when I think about going out and doing a deal with Microsoft or IBM, that same approach to mapping out the organization, finding the influencers, making that power of persuasion palpable, that's what I'd love to bring to you guys. And so if you choose the right frame, you can tell a really beautiful story inside it. Cool?
Yes. Thank
All right.
you.
Well, Simone, I have to give you big props again. I know you can't hear the digital applause out across the world, but thank you so much for being a brave volunteer today.
Well, you have to be when you are in sales.
That's right. So for any of the folks who are just starting their careers or thinking about a career change, know that sales can definitely be a very bold profession, but also a great one if you've got that hunger to go out there and build those relationships. So Simone is a walking, talking proof of that. Okay. That being said, let me answer a couple final questions here, and I'll see what people are asking on the chat. It looks like everyone is feeling pretty good about the interview, which is awesome. Let me finish up with one final pop quiz. Okay, so this question is, what actually motivates you to succeed on the job? Now go ahead and publish that poll. Sorry, the last poll didn't work. My apologies. And go ahead and answer this poll. Once you actually get the job, what makes you successful? Are you driven by a really great caring boss? Is it that feeling of accountability to teammates who really want to help out? Is it having really clear deadlines? Or maybe even having a formal structure in which to operate? What gives you what you need to do your job well? Okay, we'll take a couple more seconds to get your answers. I see a tight race between the first two, and we're done. Okay, so check out these results. Clearly, people are motivated by other people, by a great boss, by teammates who are relying on you. That's really important. And so what I'm going to argue to you is the reason that job searching can feel so frustrating is that you're often doing it alone. You basically don't have any of that social support structure. You don't have any sense of accountability. You don't have that peer group to push you through. And so it can often feel like this sort of endless stuck sensation, if you will, where, yeah, you make a little bit of progress, but then you don't get the interview or you don't get the offer, so you go backwards. You're never really getting to your goal. What I would argue is similar to doing a really great job on the job when you have accountability and you have a great leader. Job searching with a coach can take you to that next level. And so if you're stuck facing this brick wall of not knowing where to begin, of getting rejection email from those online black holes, of going into interviews where you always feel like the runner-up, just know that I now offer an opportunity to break through together. This is something brand new, actually. I've never had the time or the ability to sort of offer this to break into tech students. But for the first time, I have this full career coaching option, which includes 3-hour-long one-on-one sessions. So just like you saw today, in terms of Neha or Simone, you have similar kinds of conversations around interviewing, resumes, LinkedIn, networking, everything standing in your way. You have access to all my online courses, so all the sort of step-by-step walkthroughs of how you find referrals and how you get interviews. And then a full makeover of your resume and interview, if that's what's or resume and LinkedIn, if that's what's standing in your way, or your interview stories, if that's what's holding you back. And so really there are 3 kind of opportunities that I imagine here if you're feeling stuck. First of all, if you're on the sidelines, not even knowing where to begin, know that I can very much help you with that first step of finding your fit. This is what you've done before, and this is what you can do next. Here's how you can connect that past to the future so you convince the recruiter. You fill that need that they're searching for. And then you build a profile and you build the LinkedIn resume that speak directly to that audience, that turn your candidacy into a recruiter magnet. So that's one option. The second option is about getting interviews. So ultimately, are you going to be sort of that person on the sidelines who's always getting those emails that say, thanks for applying, it was a very crowded field? Or are you actually going to empathize with what recruiters are up against and how they think about you? Are you going to build your resume on LinkedIn to speak directly to that audience? And then ultimately get those insiders at the company to give you the referral that gets you a shot at your dream job. That's what we can do in terms of getting interviews. And then finally, if you're at that last stage of, okay, I've got the interviews, I just need the offer, know that we can do this exact same thing that Simone and I just practiced. We can talk about exactly why you're getting dinged, especially in those first critical 5 minutes. I can give you step-by-step templates, just like I did for that first answer, of how to answer any kind of interview question. And then most importantly, we're just going to practice. Like any kind of muscle, your interview muscle has to get built over time. And we'll do that through repeated practice. And so even though at some point I'll probably charge $1,000 for all of this, at least for today, I'm going to charge $4.99 because I feel like based on the survey that I did a couple weeks ago, that felt like a reasonable value for folks who are out there feeling stuck and who want to break through. That's what you guys have told me. And so if you want to go ahead and get access to that offer, you can go to this site, breakinto.tech/now. You can read my reviews from 300 plus Michigan students who I've coached, a bunch of different private coaching clients, and look at some of the job offers that my clients have earned. And then if you actually do it in the course of this session today, I'm happy to give you something a little bit crazy, which is the actual resume I used to get an offer at Google and the actual cover letter that I sent to Apple to get my very first tech interview. So a little bit peeling back the onion in my own experience, but I'm happy to share that with you if you book during the session today. So if you're feeling inspired, feel free to go ahead and grab that offer, and that's on your screen right now. And in the meantime, as you consider whether this might be a good fit for you based on where you are, just know that I'd love to take any questions that are standing in your way. So if you're stuck on the sidelines and not sure about the right role, ask those questions. If you're worried about getting a better shot at getting interviews, ask those questions. If you want to talk about how to make sure that the interview is the best 5 or 30 minutes of your performing life, we can talk about that. And I can also answer any questions about these coaching packages. So feel free to chat those in right now, and I'll take those one at a time. Okay, so we have a lot of good stuff coming in. I'm going to take these questions sort of in the order they're received. Chala says, the 5-minute decision worries me because this means that unconscious bias may play a prominent role. We pick the people that we like the most. How do we change that? And Chala, you have hit on the most important question, which is the one that Laszlo Bach was wrestling with and that other HR managers have wrestled with forever, which is how do you train employees to actually be more objective in the search? Not just pick the people like them, but the people who are best for the job. And because there's been 100 years of research on this and no one's cracked the case, I would argue that it's less about changing those unconscious biases than playing the game better with the existing set of rules. Now, as you know, as a former kindergarten teacher, my goal setting out was to change the world, change the rules by which everything is played. But the reality is that if you can't change those rules as one job seeker, at least use those rules to your favor. Be that warm, competent person who has a concise, structured, and passionate answer right off the get-go that plays to all those biases, that makes those neurons light up and say, hey, I can trust this person. I like this person. I want to be around this person. And even though that may be unfair in a macro objective sense, in terms of getting you the dream job, it's going to get your foot in the door. And then once you're on the inside and you're hiring at Google or you're hiring at a startup, then go change the system some more. And I think that would be a really powerful legacy to leave for the next generation. Great question, Chala. Okay, let's see here. Felicia says, most of my background is in the aerospace division, and I have been having issues pivoting to the fintech industry. I also noticed that I don't get responses from recruiters. I have tried to tailor my profile as much as I can, but I also notice keywords that recruiters are searching for are not what I'm targeting. Okay, so let's go back to this keywords question. Once you know that you're going to be a product manager or a product marketer or a salesperson, how do you make sure you have those exact right keywords on your LinkedIn profile and on your resume? Well, the first place you want to start is you want to come right back to LinkedIn, and this time you want to look at the job section. So not all this information about people and what they're up to, but what are people saying about their jobs? So for example, Felicia says that she wants to be in fintech. So we'll look for a product manager role in the fintech industry. I'll pull that up real quick. And sure enough, here's some really cool ones. So let's check out this one based in Philly. What you're going to want to do is you're going to want to mine this job description for everything that stands out as unique and distinct from other job descriptions. What I mean by that is at the very bottom of almost every job description, you're going to see things like you must work independently, you must have written skills, you must have problem-solving skills. I can promise you these things are so generic as to be meaningless. No recruiter in the world is going to search for those because it's not going to add any signal to the noise. Instead, they're going to search for the specific things that are unique to the role. So product strategy, roadmap, prioritized feature, user acceptance criteria. And even if you haven't necessarily used that exact language before in your career, if you've done something similar, take credit for it. So for example, maybe you were working on a new airplane in the aerospace industry and you put together the strategy. Well, guess what? That's the product strategy. Maybe you went one step further and said, okay, here are the parts of the plane that we have to prioritize. That's the roadmap. Maybe you talked to potential clients about what they wanted in that plane. Those are user acceptance criteria. And so now, if you can have those unique keywords on your LinkedIn, on your resume, you win that search. So that's something that I would highly recommend. Now, that being said, a little cheat sheet way that you can sort of get through this is to go to this cool site called jobscan.co. And even though you can pay them money if you want to, you can actually do a really simple resume search where you paste in the job description and paste in your resume, and it'll basically compare those side by side to see how strongly you match that job. And that's a really fast, really easy way to make sure that you're using the right keywords. So check out LinkedIn Jobs and check out JobScan. Great question, Felicia. That's awesome. Okay. Linda says, how do we narrow down the role we should aim for? Connecting our past is still vague. Absolutely. And so what I gave you on that cheat sheet page a few slides ago, Linda, is definitely not the full answer, where it says, are you analytical? Are you interpersonal? What have you done before? What could you do next? But it gives you a sense of a hypothesis. What I want you to do is become a career scientist. Don't say, okay, I basically have to close my eyes and pick a role and hope for the best, which is what most people do, frankly. Instead, let me apply the scientific method. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, my first hypothesis is that product management is for me, but my backup plan is project management. And again, just like we were talking about here, find people who have those roles today and do a Vulcan mind meld with them. Put yourself into their shoes by saying, what do you do all day? What do you love about this job? What do you hate about this job? How do you see this job changing in the future? And start to say, okay, That's their perception. But if I filter that through my own experiences, am I getting excited? Am I leaning in? I can't wait to try this on. Or am I sort of sitting back and thinking, oh man, that sounds like a downer. I would definitely hit the snooze button on my alarm clock not to do that job. If you can get in touch with that visceral sense of whether a job is right, now you can confirm or refute your hypothesis based on evidence as opposed to just sort of gut instinct. Great question, Linda. Okay, I think we are all set. So let's go ahead and close up for today. Again, if you're still interested, you can absolutely go ahead and grab that coaching option at breakinto.tech/now. And if not, no worries. I want you to be super successful wherever your career journey takes you. Just know that the tech world has never been more wide open than it is now. Yes, there's subconscious bias in hiring. Yes, there may be other factors at play, but the economy is roaring, and especially in tech. I did a search yesterday for all the internet jobs in the US, and there were 1 million in the States alone. And that should give you a sense that the hiring managers of the tech world and the recruiters of the tech world are desperate. Maybe they're not putting out the best job descriptions. Maybe they haven't made it super friendly to get involved, but just know that there's demand out there and there's hunger. And so it's up to you to go out there and get it. And I want you to use these tools that we talked about today to break through, to get access to those jobs, to a career that you love. Because whether it's in 2019 right now, or a few months down the road, life is too short to sit on the sidelines. So go out there, break through, get a job that you're proud of. Thank you so much for joining everyone today. Thank you especially to Neha and Simone for being amazing volunteers. And I will look for you guys in the tech world. Cheers, everyone.